Hello and welcome to a Halloween special edition of Crawl Error. On this session, I am joined by Sam Taylor of Evolve Search. Good afternoon, Sam.
Hi, you all right?
I'm not doing too bad, thank you. Glad to have you here. So, as I have with all these videos, no one has clicked on the thumbnail to hear what I've got to say. So, without further ado, Sam, happy Halloween and over to you.
Brilliant. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully that works fine. Cool. So I'm going to be talking about SEO horror stories. Firstly, I'm Sam. I'm from Evolve Search. I'm a technical SEO consultant. And in the past, I've worked with a lot of sites and I've made a lot of mistakes. So in this talk, I'll be going over some mistakes that I've made. So I think it's important to really just own up to mistakes. SEO is quite a learning curve, and it's one that you're going to be constantly learning and testing things out. So also I'm going to be working and showing you mistakes that sites that I've worked with have made, and as well how to avoid them and overcome obstacles that you're facing. So I've got 3 examples of major changes that I've worked with in the past and what I've done to overcome them. So the first one is paid links. So it's quite a controversial topic, and I'm definitely not someone who hasn't paid for links before in the past. I've used agencies and outsourced it, especially where I've not had the resource to do it myself, and I've also done like things like blogger outreach and stuff. So I've definitely paid for links. It's not a dig at anyone at all. But if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen that I posted recently about a site that I worked with that had paid links, like a history of paid links, and basically it didn't do well for the site. So a bit of background on the client. It's a legal client. They joined us probably about August last year, and they were with a previous agency who did paid links for them. So here's a look at their search metrics visibility. As you can see, onboarding for about 6 months prior to it, they'd started to get an increase in visibility. And then the 6 months after, it started declining. So during onboarding, obviously we do the typical tech audit, we do the content audit, we plan out strategy and kind of like a plan for what we're going to be doing over the course of the campaign. As well, I look at the backlinks and I take a look at that. So throughout their backlink audit, pretty much I picked out a lot of things that I thought were paid links. So it was articles that contained exact match keyword text. For this, obviously, it's a legal client, so they specialise in medical negligence and work accident claims. So a lot of the anchor text was work accident and medical negligence. That were the main keywords that they were focusing on during their campaign. So you can see here that we've got work accident anchor. We have one here which is accident at work claims, and then we also have another one which is accidents at work claims, but these are like kind of duplicates as well. So from my tweet, I got a lot of questions about, what is a paid link and how would I define a paid link? So personally, I would define a paid link as an article or a link that contains, an exact match keyword anchor text. So rather than linking naturally or mentioning a client or something, naturally, it's forced into content. And it's just linked unnaturally. As well, the previous slide just showed duplicate content. So if it's not syndicated, it probably means that they've had a press release and they've just pushed it out or paid a load of sites to put it live. So that probably is a paid link. Another one would be if it contains a disclosure. So obviously if it says there's a sponsorship or if this was in collaboration with, then there's probably like money exchanged. And then again, just something that I suspect might have had money exchanged for. So just learning my experiences over the years, just picking out what I would consider to be a paid link. So sometimes it is, you can see patterns, but sometimes it is just like using your own knowledge. So for work accidents, this is how the ranking looked prior to us starting on the campaign. So you can see like previously, before, or like as the links were added, the site wasn't ranking for work accidents, yeah. And you know, it was ranking okay. It wasn't first page, it was driving a little bit of traffic, but it left me with kind of two decisions. And one was I could disavow these paid links. The issue was that they were working well. It was a new client. If we just like started this relationship with them, we don't want to tell them to disavow everything that they've just worked on, and B, you know, have that result in a big drop. And the other option was to keep the paid links and just see what happens. You know, we could build upon what they've already started. Maybe after we've, you know, looked at content and technical, and added our own links ourselves, we could look to disavow them in the future. But it turned out that this was the wrong decision to make, and one that I kind of regret. So after onboarding, you know, we said, you know, no disavows needed. You've got a few spams, but like it's nothing major. We're keeping an eye on these paid links, but yeah, so we did that and everything dropped off. So it was somewhat prior to the January core update, but a lot of them kind of dropped off in the January core update. So a lot of key terms dropped out of the top 100. They pretty much had zero visibility after the January update. And I was unhappy, and obviously so was the client, because they weren't really seeing a lot of results from the work. It was still early days, but obviously it's not ideal to drop in the first like couple of months. So what did I do? So I ruthlessly added the links to the disavow file and just uploaded it. I quite savagely actually asked the client for previous link reports from the agency and just did a copy and paste job. So anything that I thought was paid, it just went in the file. So I checked against like Majestic, Ahrefs, Search Console, and I just put it in and I put it live. And I had the awkward conversation with the client where it's like, listen, I know you've paid for this previous agency to work for you and they've done all this, but we just need to get rid of all that work essentially. But it paid off. So after the disavow was created, you know, it took a couple of months. A few rankings started to come back, but after the May core update, we actually saw like a big spike in visibility and a lot of rankings return, which has continued today. As you can see, they're now at their like highest visibility ever. And this is back to the work accidents keyword ranking. You can see that we're now first page. We've now reached you know, higher than previous, and I believe that this would be sustainable. So it kind of came back a little bit before May's update, but May's update really like pushed it into like traffic driving positions. So in a nutshell, I wouldn't rely on paid links, and be ruthless with your disavow. There's going to be some awkward conversations if you know that you've got a client with a previous agency who've purchased links. But you know, you're going to have to do it. Don't think that because it works now it will always work. I was definitely on the fence. I used to think that, you know, how does Google know that you've paid for it? But they can recognize patterns and the algorithm is set to do that. So I've seen it happen. And it's good to mention as well that I had the same situation with another client. So for context, that client was financial, and they had the same situation. They dropped dramatically in January from the core update, and I added all of their old agency links to the disavow, and they've done the same kind of trend, and they're now at their highest visibility again. So yeah, just don't trust paid links. I know it's a controversial topic, but this is what I've seen. Yeah. The second kind of horror story that I'm going to talk about is navigation, or otherwise like large scale on-site changes. So a bit of backstory on this client. It's an e-commerce website. We have worked with them probably about a year before this all happened, and they were on like a positive upward trend, you know, that was all going well, until one day we got like an email from the client saying, Oh, so we've noticed a little bit of drop in like a traffic. Can you take a look? So we had a look and investigated. We looked at the possibility of if it was a Google update that caused it. So we had a look, on various forums and like sites to see if there was any rumblings, or on Twitter, if there's any like industry, talk about stuff. There wasn't. The possibility of a behavioural trend, it was unlikely, but we had to check anyway. But it wasn't like any time of year. It wasn't like Christmas or anything. It was just a regular, Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. We looked at the possibility of a penalty as well. So we checked Search Console for any like manual actions. Again, it was unlikely. Could have been algorithmic, but we didn't think that a site that was on a positive trajectory and doing work that we thought was not spammy and quality. So we ruled that out. So then we looked at any major changes that might have happened to the site recently. So we noticed something, so we asked the client, can you confirm if there have been any major changes to the site recently, maybe in dev and stuff? And they were like, no, the only thing I can think of is that we added a mega navigation. So previously the navigation was a flat structure. Obviously it was on our kind of radar to add to it and introduce like more categories and subcategories, just to improve your user experience and stuff. But in this instance, the client just literally added every page under it. So there was too many pages. In theory, it's a good change, but in practice, without SEO input or valuation, it's not so much. So looking at that visibility, this is kind of what happened, because you can see, obviously, it went down quite a bit, and we've kind of struggled to get that back up for about 2 months. So the issue with this change was that it impacted site hierarchy and how landing pages are prioritized, and also impacted internal page ranks. So where we was like ranking really well for key terms, like main, I don't want to say Hollywood terms, but like big search terms that we were ranking like the category page, the main category page that was in the navigation. Now, because loads of little subcategories have been added, like different URLs were ranking for different days, it was causing a lot of ranking fluctuations, and basically that was the reason for the traffic loss. And you really don't think that this would have so much of an impact. It does sound like a good implementation to do. It's going to improve user experience. It's going to give Google more pages to like start crawling at, and like spider through the site. So it does sound like a good change, but you do need to kind of make sure that you're doing it in the proper way. So to kind of rectify this situation, we reverted the changes immediately. So we said, can we just revert it back to what it was before? And that was done with a pretty immediate effect. And then we also strategically created a plan for the navigation that included only priority pages. So instead of including like a really niche facet that was like didn't have a lot of search volume, we only included like the main navigation and main like subcategories that we would consider priority. So this was implemented, and then as a result, we saw it come back to the search visibility. It came back eventually, and then continued on. But yeah, this really did hinder us for a while. So in a nutshell, what went wrong was that we didn't prioritize client, dev, and agency communication. I've experienced this a lot in the past where, devs and clients are maybe not aware of like the changes that they're doing and how the impact on SEO. So it's good to make sure that you have a strong relationship between all three, and just make sure that you include priority pages in the navigation as well. So just yeah. The third one is, and final one, is local SEO, and I've put local SEO on quotation marks because it's not really SEO, it's kind of a grey area, but it's ranking when you're not actually there. So I've had a client in the past who were a laundry service, but essentially they were an app that connected users to a local partner via app, obviously. They didn't actually have any physical locations, so their head office was located in London. They didn't have any, local places either. They literally just worked as their brand, but filtered out and like kind of operated their service through different channels and different services. So yeah, they had no physical locations anywhere, so it wasn't like a classic local SEO thing. It was kind of difficult to build links that were local. It was difficult to kind of, just figure out a plan of how to rank well for like things like laundry in Manchester without being, penalised or whatever. So when they came to us, they had a lot of pages that looked like this. And the issue was that they had a lot of duplicate content across the site. So you can see here, pretty much like they use a template, but it just changes depending on what the location was inputted. So they were generated by a database. So if you put like a list of keywords in, it would just use the same template and kind of spew like a lot of pages out. There was over 2,000 URLs that contained duplicate content. And if you think about how many UK cities and towns there are, actually that's quite a lot of URLs to have for the cities and towns. So it meant that there are a lot of duplicate locations. So they just had a different URL structure. So where we had like Manchester dry cleaning, there'd also be dry clean in Manchester, and there'd just be a lot of duplicates. So when you searched for like bits and pieces of the content in Google, it would spring back quite a lot of results, but not all of them that were live on the site. So that kind of meant that, a lot of them weren't indexed, and this was pre-new Search Console, I think. So we couldn't actually see that. So we had to use a lot of search operators. But yeah, there was just a lot of rubbish that was crawled and wasn't indexed because it just wasn't of any quality. So how we kind of combated this was to stick to large cities and towns and just make sure that we had one page for each location. This reduced the number of pages by 90%. It's kind of like a bit of a grey area, like I said, because obviously you don't really want to create doorway pages or pages that are like low quality or won't rank well or are kind of spammy. But it still works to have location pages. If you're not there, you just need to value your quality over your quantity. So any old URLs that we had, so any of those duplicate URLs that we had, we would redirect to the new URL. We also created a new page design that allowed for more content to be added. And we also made sure that each page contained unique content. So rather than it using a template, it would use, a human written piece of content. So this is what the new design looked like. We have like things like reviews for that location, fun facts about the location. We included location specific promos and postcodes covered, so it would kind of maybe come up if you search for your postcode. As much as we possibly could, we made the title and the H1 unique. It's kind of difficult to say Manchester dry cleaning or whatever so many times without being, kind of templated. But we did that as much as we could. And then we made sure that all services were under one page rather than under multiple. So rather than having Manchester dry clean and Manchester laundry service, Manchester ironing service, we had just Manchester, and it would cover the content would cover dry clean and laundry and ironing. So this actually did result in a lot of increased traffic. So it really shows that you need to value quality over quantity. So it is still possible to rank when you're not physically there, but you just need to make sure that if you're doing location pages, you're focusing on the user and you're not focusing on trying to manipulate search engines and ranking for every possible keyword. You need to consider that the algorithm is very advanced at this point. It's still not, ideal, but it can understand, similar areas. So if you're talking about Manchester, you'll rank in places like, I can't think of anywhere in Manchester, Salford, and places like that. But yeah, so you don't have to have like a Salford Manchester dry cleaning page. You can just have a Manchester one and then maybe include content on Salford or whatever. avoid the use of automatic functions if possible. It depends on your size. Obviously, if you've got a massive site and you've got a lot of locations, you might want to automate some of that process, but ideally, if you can, make sure that the content is unique and written by a human if possible as well, and just offer a good viewer experience. Just don't fluff it out. And then yeah, I think that pretty much brings me to the end of my presentation. I've included my Twitter if anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, but thanks for watching if not.
Thank you very much, Sam, and I do encourage anyone who doesn't already to follow you on Twitter, because you do share some good insights and good comments.
And memes.
Memes, yes, and memes. So thank you for talking and sharing. I appreciate it's the second time you've done a talk like this.
Yeah.
It's great to have you, and especially with, now I know that most of your actual background decorations are just normal anyway. Nice that I brought you out into your natural habitat.
Brilliant, thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Well, also thank you to everyone for watching this special edition of Crawl Hour. If you've not watched any of the other Halloween specials that we've done, please look at the link in the description and look at the rest of the playlist. Thank you very much to Sam for joining us, and want to wish everyone a happy Halloween.